Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Estella and Mom and Ann. Hope you guys are all doing well. So yes, the colored glue. Good morning, Pat. Um, s- uh, so yeah, it's Elmer's purple glue. Hey, by the way, speaking of colored glue, um, I don't know. Some of you, I know Ann knows about this. Um, there's a gentleman who took advantage of our blessing box. And he, when we were doing that, I think he and his wife were here almost every day picking up some items, and he has since dropped. Hi, Kathy. Dropped off some things at church. He has some kind of a business, and he's moving and he's unloading stuff. Uh, some of us haven't figured out the use of this, but for those of you who use hot glue guns, he dropped off tens of thousands of colored glue sticks for hot glue guns. This is a, glittery gold one. I grabbed. I was just going to experiment with it, see if it fit our glue gun. But there's all kinds of colors, every color you can imagine. If you can think of a use for hot glue gun sticks, those of you who are crafty, we have tens of thousands of them here, and we just don't know what to do with them. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to talk to you about, but I used the glue um, um, really for what we're going to talk about. For those of you who look at the thumbnail, we talked yesterday about actually yesterday was Humor Monday, but we talked Friday. We've been talking about hi Phyllis, um, um, thinking. We were talking about how Romans chapter 12. We've been talking about transformation, about what it means to grow. There's all kinds of names for this, discipleship, etc. But we've been talking about this concept of change, both on Sunday mornings and here, and covering some of the same topics as well as others. But on Friday, we were talking about the fact that our role in this change is Romans chapter 12 verse 2 says that our role is to change the way we think. This is not new. In Christian circles, we've talked about this a lot, the idea of thinking, and that really what we think about really shapes us. But that's what I want to talk about this morning, the idea of thinking. But I want to get at it a different way. Because I think there's something that we're missing slightly when it comes to thinking, and I want to kind of get at it a different way. So I want to talk about the fact that what we love is what we think about. What we love is what we think about. And let me get at it this way. I want to talk about that a little because ultimately this is how transformation comes about. Not just, well, let me go about this way. In the Old Testament, well, let me get it. So when we talk about what we love, that our English word love, it just has such a wide variety of meanings. And I know you guys have been around at church in a length of time. You know that in the Greek, there are 4 different words for love and blah, blah, blah. And, agape is God's love. But before we even get to there, the Bible is similar in that because we're human beings, there are all kinds of different ways to talk about love. So in the Old Testament, I would say that probably the number one most important word in the Old Testament is the word chesed. Sometimes, like if you would Google this, if you use English letters, sometimes it's spelled Chesed, and sometimes it's just Hesed. But I'm pretty sure that the Hebrew translation has that guttural to start it, that chesed. So you say it, you don't say hesed, you say chesed with a little bit of that back of your throat chesed thing. The word chesed in the Old Testament is a word that is used a couple hundred times. And the problem with it is that there's no English equivalent to the word chesed. And in fact, I'm going to talk about the fact that the difficulty is when it comes to the New Testament, there's no Greek equivalent. When Greek writers were trying to write about chesed, they didn't have an equivalent either. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So if you look up chesed and try to figure out what it means, a lot of times we just translate it as love. But it doesn't mean love the way we think about love. So for those of you who have, like, we think about the old King James, etc., the word that it was often translated loving kindness. But if you start looking at it, and you can do this, you can Google it, and you can find all kinds of ways to figure out where it's used in the Old Testament. But most of our Old Testaments, our English translations, there are about a half dozen, maybe more, half dozen translations for the word chesed. Sometimes it's the word loyalty. They'll translate it as loyalty. Sometimes they'll translate it as devotion. Good morning, Fred. They'll translate it as devotion. In other words, the way people are devoted. Sometimes they'll talk about it as kindness or loving kindness. Sometimes they'll talk about it as covenant love, because the theme of the Old Testament is that God is making a covenant. That's why we call it the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, the Old Testament, that there's a covenant that God made with people. In fact, God made several covenants. He made a covenant with Abraham. He made a covenant with David. And then, of course, there's the Mosaic covenant, the big covenant of the Old Testament. And chesed has to do with the fact that what you love, you are devoted to. That's not true of everything we love. Like, I love the Eagles. I'm not devoted to them in any special way. I love pizza. I love spaghetti. I love bike riding. All kinds of things that we love, but I'm not necessarily devoted to them. And again, that's our problem with the word love. But there are some things that we love to which we are, in fact, devoted, and we're loyal. And it's those, I do love to eat. I just love eating. I love Mary Ann's donuts, all kinds of things. Love Wyoming. But that we can use that word love in a way that expresses not just I have affection towards something, but it also expresses the fact that I am devoted to it and my life revolves around it. That's what that word chesed means. God in the Old Testament is saying to the people of Israel, I love you with a covenant love. I'm devoted to you. In fact, in many ways, God is saying how I act is determined by my covenant love. It's God saying to them. In fact, sometimes we miss this so much. But sometimes God says to the Israelites, he says, I will be a God to you. And what that means is the Jewish people in the ancient world, all these ancient cultures had an idea of what a God would be and what he would do. He would live in a temple, etc. And so God is saying, because of my devotion to you, I will function as a God to you. I'll function the way you think a God will behave. Now, he won't do some of the crass, ugly things that gods would do. But that's what God is saying to the Jewish people. That's what he was asking from them. He was asking them, you be devoted to me. You be loyal to me. And here's the problem in the New Testament. And so the New Testament doesn't have a word for hesed. And some of you, that if you've been around the church, we talk about different kinds of love, erotic love and brotherly love. And you could probably even say it, that there is a word that we use for God's love. It's the word, fill in the blank. You know what it is. It's the word agape. But what you may not know, what Bible scholars know, and I've read so much about this, is that um, agape in some ways was an undefined word prior to the New Testament. And what I mean by that is it's a word that was really rarely used in Greek, ancient Greek literature. So one of the ways that we define words, if you're a Greek scholar, is when you come across it, if it's a rare word in the Bible, we go to ancient Greek literature and we say, well, how was it used in ancient Greek literature? What did it mean? The problem with agape is that it was so rarely used in ancient Greek literature that we can't tell what it means. And most scholars will say, most Bible scholars will say that agape is a word that the New Testament writers used, and they gave meaning to it. It was so rarely used, and so it came to mean God's love. And I'm pretty sure what they were doing is they were saying, we don't have a word for hesed. So they took this rarely used word, agape, and they used it in place of chesed to talk about God's love, his loyalty to us. Because in the New Testament, there is this new covenant that we have. God is making this new covenant. So it's a really fascinating thing to recognize that Greek speaking, Greek writing New Testament writers, they had the same problem we do with translating. They looked at this and they said, how do we put into Greek this word that we don't have a meaning for? So they used the word agape. And it's this word that talks about not just I love something, but it's this thing to which I'm devoted. Now, here's the thing, and this is where I'm going to get, I know that I'm probably going to lose some of you. We love all kinds of things, so I was just talking about Phyllis recognized I just love eating, and that's, there's more truth than that. But we can love things without having a devotion to them, a loyalty. Our life doesn't revolve around them. On the other hand, there are some things that we love that absolutely shape how we live our lives and who we are. We're devoted to those things. And, please stick with me on this. But for me, you've heard me talk a lot about how much I love hunting. Now, let me just say, for those of you who think that means that I like to kill things, that's not the truth. In fact, I will actually, if I am lucky enough to actually harvest a deer during hunting season, I will often keep going and getting in my tree stand. Now, what I love about hunting is there's really no one way to say it, but I will tell you that hunting and what goes with it, because of my devotion to it, it has shaped my life. Let me explain it this way. I get 2 hunting magazines, and talk about how I want to talk a little bit about how hunting for me is so much more than just going out and killing a thing. I get 2 hunting magazines. One of them, I would say most of it is devoted to how do you kill better. And I get that magazine and I read it, but there's 1 or 2 articles every time. Usually one of them is an editorial where there's a guy who will write about his adventures, not so much what he gets to kill. In fact, a few of his articles talk about that, but it's adventures. But I get another magazine, and this is the truth. I get a magazine called Bugle, and it has to do with the sound an elk makes. An elk bugles. And this is the truth. My wife, who has never hunted at all, She has never gone hunting with me. She did not grow up in a hunting family. She has no interest in hunting. When Bugle magazine arrives, she reads Bugle magazine before I do. And you can ask her about it. It's the truth. I just got an issue of Bugle magazine. I just got an issue of Bugle magazine. It came in the mail. Donna grabbed it. She sat down and she started flipping through it. And she said to me, "Oh, this looks like a tearjerker of an article." And she read it. And that night we went to bed and she's sitting there reading Bugle because Bugle magazine is not about killing something. Hi, Sherry. Bugle magazine is about, it's about the friendships and the connections that people build with hunting. It's about the connection with nature. The article that Donna was talking about from Bugle magazine is about a woman who was paralyzed from the waist down in an accident. And she had to give up at first a lot of the things that she loved, but she loved hunting with her husband. And so the article is about the fact that after she was paralyzed and couldn't get out, it was about how multiple people came around her. They live in Montana. A rancher who said to her, "You can come on our land." Her husband actually fashioned a sled from one of those little bicycle carts, that you pull behind you. He fashioned a sled from a bicycle cart, put skis on it. He put poles on it, and his wife will climb in. He will put her into that bicycle cart, and he will pull her in the snow so that she can get out and go hunting. That article had nothing to do with killing things. It had everything to do with the loyalty, the devotion of a husband to a wife. And that's what that magazine is filled with. It's filled with stories about fathers and sons and daughters. It's filled with nature. And Donna, I have heard Donna say to people, especially when we're out in Wyoming, I have heard Donna say the phrase, "Have you ever heard an elk bugle?" And people who don't know anything about elk, which, I didn't either for a long time, they kind of look at you and think like, like, what the heck are you talking about? But in elk, you should, when we're done, Google elk bugle and see if he comes up. But they make this really loud bugling sound, and when you are in the mountains, like we've had a chance to be, and Donna has heard this sound. You can be in the mountains, the high mountains of Wyoming, and this sound echoes through the valleys, and it is this haunting, glorious sound of this elk bugle, and Donna's heard it. But all that to say that this is what I love about hunting, and it shapes how I think, both good and bad. Hunting is not God. And sometimes there are things about hunting that shape how I think in bad ways, and I have to struggle with that. One thing that happens is sometimes it makes you very possessive of like your spot, and it's not my spot. And a lot of hunters struggle with that. But I love the devotion to friends. Some of my closest friends are guys that I hunt with. Hunting shapes what I see. We can be driving along the road, and this often happens, and I'll say, "Hey, you see the deer?" And Don's like, where? And she will joke, and she's like, sometimes you can't see your car keys in front of you, but you can see a deer, 100 yards away when you see just an ear sticking above a tree. And she will joke about that. So my love for hunting shapes how I think and how I see the world. I had an experience a couple years ago. I mean, it's almost 20 minutes. I'll finish with this and then talk about why I'm talking about this. A couple years ago, when I go hunting, I usually go into the woods in the morning in the dark, about an hour before sunrise. And I love walking into the woods in the dark because the woods in the dark are entirely different than the woods in daylight. And a couple years ago, 3 years ago, there were some raccoons that, for whatever reason, were always hanging around the tree where I had my tree stand. And so the first time I saw them, I was walking in, and often, you see eyes glowing in the woods in the dark. And on this occasion, I saw eyes glowing, but they're about 15 feet off the ground. And I'm thinking, whatever it is, there's two sets of them, and they are in trees. And when I got to my tree stand, I realized there was two raccoons. One of them was in the tree that I was going to climb, and one was right next door. And I thought, there's no way I'm climbing this tree with a raccoon in it. So I backed off and just kind of lobbed sticks, not trying to hit them, but just lobbed sticks. And eventually, I could watch the two of them. They ran down the tree and took off. There was another time that year when I got in my tree stand and I was climbing it, and there was explosion of sound above me. And I looked up, there was a raccoon in my tree. So I got down, his tree. I got down, waited for him to come down, and he didn't come down. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going up. So I went up my tree stand. Believe it or not, that raccoon climbed up to the very top of that tree. It's a big tree. He found a Y branch at the top of the tree, and he curled up in that Y branch in the same way like a cat would curl up in front of, or a dog would curl up in front of a fireplace. And he just sat up at the very top of that tree for 6 hours the whole time I was in it. And it was just this fantastic day of me just sitting there. I should have been looking for deer, but I'm just sitting there watching this raccoon above me. And every once in a while, he would just poke his head down to see if I was still there. And he curled up above me in a tree. And it's stuff like that. It's this connection with, it's being in this creation that God has made that I love so much about it. And all that to say, that there are some things that we love, not everything. Marianne's Donuts doesn't shape how I think, but there are some things that we love that it shapes how we think about the world. We reorient our lives around those things. And all that to say that when the Bible talks about the fact that we are transformed by what we think, it isn't just what's in our brain. It's the fact that these are the things that we love, and we become connected to them. That's why I was holding up that glue earlier. If you're looking for transformation and change, ask yourself, what do I love? What is it that my life revolves around? Now, it may actually be hard for you to come up with things, and it may cause you to really ponder for a while. But this is what it means to love God. That you become connected to God, and your life begins to orient around who God is. Same with people. When we love people the right way, our life is oriented around them. And the difficulty is, of course, that Scripture says things like we have to love our enemies. One of the most difficult things I think that we face. But the thinking that the Bible is talking about when it says change the way you think, what it is speaking about is this idea of chesed or agape. What is it that you love? Because what you love orients your whole life. That's the thinking that the Bible is talking about. And in fact, I should probably even ask the question, not so much what is it you love, but to what are you attached? To what are you attached? What are you connected with? That's what the Bible is after. So give some thought to that, because that's what is going to shape your life. Obviously, the Bible is saying there are right things. This is what the Bible means, by the way. I need to be done, but this is what the Bible means when it says the love of money is the root of all evil. It's the idea that some people have a loyalty to money, and their lives are driven around attachment to money, a devotion to it, and that ruins lives. So I got a 9:30 appointment, and I am really sorry that this has taken so long, but it's important because the transformation that we human beings are after, it's more than just what we think about. It's the thinking that is caused by what do we love, to what are we attached. And so you have to think about that a little bit and process it and recognize that the Bible is saying you have to love the right things. So anyway, let me pray and then get on with our days. God, I want to thank you for the fact that you have loved us with this kind of devoted, covenant, loyal love. It isn't just that you have an emotional reaction to us, but that you're devoted to us. You have expressed your faithfulness to us. And you, because of who you aren't going to break that devotion, that faithfulness. You'll love us faithfully always. You'll treat us according to how you love us. God, for us, this is what we struggle with. We know that sometimes we love the wrong things, or we love the right things, but we love them in the wrong way. So God, I pray that you will help us to be wise when it comes to determining what is it that we love, to what are we attached, to what are we loyal. Those are the things that we end up thinking about, God. And I pray you'll help us to be attached to the right things and therefore think about the right things. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All righty, everybody. So thank you very much, and hope you guys have a great day, and love you all. I do love you all. See ya.